y'all. I'm sorry.
I
got class. I'm sorry.
That's why I was like 6 o'clock. Oh man, this is not gonna work. I'm gonna be at swim practice every time.
Good
Hi, Dr.
afternoon.
Lamb.
Good
Hi,
afternoon,
everybody.
Dr. Lamb.
Are we going to have to go later? We can go later.
No, sir. just forgive me if I'm in the background, like wrestling children to go.
Well, I figure if we start at 6, if I get on a rant, I won't hold you past 8. And I tend to do that every now and then. So, no, it's really for the nights that we have case studies. Those things, time everybody presents, it usually takes a couple hours. And I want everybody to get their full turn.
Dr. Lamb,
Yes.
I know that it said to use this 3rd edition of the law book. Do you still want us to use the 3rd edition? Because what I saw was a 4th edition and wasn't sure if I needed to upgrade to the 4th edition.
You can. It's not. We can't do that here at the college until the fall because they have books in the bookstore, and they don't allow us to do that until we upgrade. And so the 4th edition will be fine. It's pretty much the same thing. I've seen it.
Okay.
Just make sure that the chapters line up.
Okay.
On your reading.
Okay.
But it's pretty much the same.
Okay.
I noticed that we only had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11. Did y'all end up the semester with 11? I had 14 on the roster, but I've only got 11 registered.
I don't know. I know, like from our group from last semester, everybody from our group is here. Me, Amanda, and Tiffany, and Brittany's not on tonight, but Brittany's also in our class.
Okay. I just wondered. I'm still with you. I just turned my camera off for a second. So y'all do have work groups that you've been doing peer reviews in?
Yes.
Okay. Y'all do have those. Well, those
Yes.
same groups will be your case study groups. And I'll talk more about case studies later. But generally, everybody has, by this time, has kind of sorted out and everybody's gotten in a routine. Now, if I need to make some changes, I can or I will, but I don't like to split your groups up. So if you're in a group that has at least 2 people, if it has 3 or 4, that's fine. I don't know how many are in your groups, but if you've got a group that there's not enough in it, or if it's dysfunctional or whatever, if you'll let me know, I can move some folks around. But I'll just trust y'all to handle that business. So now please remember, this semester you only do 1 peer review of tasks 1, 2, and 3 of the OMA of somebody in your group. Just 1. That's all you have to do. You do not do a Zoom review or any of that. Trust me. Your time, your collaborative time with your teammates is going to be taken up with case studies. There are 4 of them. They are quite involved. I don't want to undersell them. Everybody says, you always tell us, but you don't really sell it. I'm telling you now, case studies will be a bear. They will take a lot of time. There's a lot of, they are multifaceted. The last one actually covers everything that we've covered pretty much in the whole semester. And so it's going to take you some time to put those things together. And then I want a PowerPoint presentation. And I give you the whole night on week 4, 6, 8, and 10. They're your nights. You get to present. Your team members, you tell me. Now, it's probably a good thing that we don't teach face-to-face anymore. I tend to throw stuff and get a little exercise, but that's okay. That's part of the process. So please remember that the peer reviews shouldn't be very lengthy or very long. And it's more for you to remember what the components of the tasks are. By the time you get here, if you need somebody to review your work, you've missed the bus somehow. We need to make sure that we trust ourselves to write our evidences. Again, let me stop my video. So tonight, what I want to do to start with, I want you to, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're missing 4 from the roster and 7 from the class list. I don't know. I'll have to figure out tomorrow where the other 3 are. So what I want to do is I want us to start with introductions. Tell me who you are and where you are and what you do. So let me go down the list here. Russell, can you hear me? I see you've got your camera off.
Yes, sir. I just left football practice, so I'm riding home.
Okay. Where are you coaching football?
Nation Ford High School, Fort Mill, South Carolina.
Nations Ford High School, Fort Mill. All right. What do you do at Nations Ford? What's your teaching job or what's your job there?
Teacher, business education.
CTE business education?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's see. Let's see. Nations Ford. I don't know if I know anybody at Nations Ford or not. I know some folks at Fort Mill.
Okay.
But welcome. Glad to have you. All right, Kaylee.
Hey, I work for a network of charter schools. I'm the special programs coordinator. So I support our North Carolina charter schools in exceptional children, Section 504, advanced and or gifted learners, and the English language learners.
Well, I'm glad to have you. You can teach class on the night we do that block. We do all that in one block. And then our last case study, that's the heart of the last case study, is the inclusion model. So I'll just coast. I'll put my feet up, get them off the pedals and coast, and let you teach that night.
I'll be fielding questions leading up to it.
That'll be great. Where are you located?
I am in Charlotte. For work, we have 2 campuses up in the Raleigh Triangle area, and then the other 8 campuses we have are in Charlotte and surrounding. We've got some in Mooresville, one in Union, one actually in Charlotte, couple in Cabarrus County. So they're kind of spread out.
Wouldn't be Pine Lake Prep and Invest and all. Is it that group?
No, Charter Schools USA. So we have Concord Lake STEAM Academy, Cabarrus Charter. Those are the 2 in Cabarrus.
I've been to Cabarrus.
Iredell Charter,
Yeah.
Langtree Charter.
Been to Langtree. I actually live just across the water from Langtree. Yep, I live last exit in Mecklenburg. I can see across the water up there. So yeah, I know that exit's been built since I lived there.
I probably drove right past you heading home from Iowa.
Yeah, well, I'm actually in the western part of the state today. I don't get to be at home very often, so I'm actually in the western mountains today. But yeah, I'll be home this weekend. But Lake Norman, there at exit 31 is where you are. So we're glad to have you. You're not related to Dr. Stephen Easton, are you?
I am not. Nope.
All right, just checking. He's a famous pastor in that part of the world, or this part of the world. I didn't know if you were related to him or not, but welcome.
You know, I haven't met anybody with Easton outside of New England, where I
think he might have originally been from New England. He went to Duke Divinity School, and he was a pastor in Morganton, North Carolina, up in Burke County about 30 years ago when my wife and I were there. It's just such you're right. That's why I asked, because nobody else from this part of the world has that, has Easton as the last name. And so he's the only Easton I guess I've ever known.
Sadly,
he
not
was-
related to the baseball bat company
Yeah,
either.
yeah, we used those when I was a baseball coach. Again, that was closer to 40 years ago. But he was pastor there in I think it was Presbyterian Church there in town. But anyway, he's kind of kept up with him. He's in Asheville now over the years. All right, welcome. We're glad to have you, Tiffany. Where are you?
Hi, I'm in High Point, North Carolina. My school is actually in Jamestown. It's Jamestown Elementary School. I am a 4th grade reading teacher there. I've been there for 5 years now, going on 6. And prior to that, I was in middle school.
So you left middle school and went to elementary school, 4th grade reading.
Yes, sir.
I like working with smart people. Oh, Lordy. And then, somebody asked me, was I the other day if I was afraid to go to hell? And I said, nope, I've been a middle school principal. I'm not scared at all. I'm trying not to go. But if I have to, I think I'll be all right. Maggie, where are you?
I'm at East Henderson High School. I'm an assistant principal. This is my first year as an assistant principal.
Now, what relationship are you to Bruce?
I'm his wife.
I thought so. I thought that might be. No, I knew. I'd already looked it up. How's Bruce doing?
He's good. I just saw him. He just said, tell him that, you're married to me. I was like, okay.
I won't hold that against you. Because I suspect you've already done this program one time. I know you had to do it for him. I'm sure he can't actually read or write. But it was easier. It would have been easier to get a camel through the eye of a needle than to get him through this program. But we made it. So
that's right. We all three made it.
Oh, I love him to death. I love him dearly. He's a fine person, and I'm so pleased for both of you. Congratulations on your new job. That's great.
Thank you.
I'm missing Amanda. There you are.
Hi, sorry.
Amanda's got in the car now.
Just got in the car from swim practice. I apologize. I'm Amanda Marco. I am a 3rd grade math teacher. I'm at a Greek immersion school in Matthews called Socrates Academy.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Socrates Academy. All right. I was down that way the other day. I had to go around the 485 loop. All right. So welcome. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Richard Norwood.
Hey, you can call me Cam. I think I log
All right.
on as Richard on Zooms, but also every now and then you might see Laura as well. But
right.
You can call me Cam.
I'll call you Cam, but probably won't call you Laura. But that sounds good. All right, Cam, where are you and what do you do?
I'm in Rock Hill, South Carolina. I'm trying to get back up to Charlotte, North Carolina to live there again, but I teach 8th grade science at Banks Trail Middle School in Fort Mill, South Carolina.
Banks Trail.
And coach a little baseball as well.
Yeah, it's about over with for the year, isn't it? I think.
Oh yeah, we had we got destroyed.
All right, Banks Trail. Let's see. Oh, down in Rock Hill. I had an intern there. I actually had 2 there. One was at Banks Trail and one was over
Or is
there.
it the school's in
in Fort
The
Mill?
school's in Fort Mill.
Yeah, I have one
Yes, sir.
I have one in Rock Hill and one in Fort Mill that were paired together, and I used to go see them. One was at Something Hook in Rock Hill, and the other one was there in Fort Mill. I used to go down and visit both of them back when we used to do face-to-face classes. And they had class with me in Charlotte at the Charlotte campus. But yeah, good place down there.
Yeah, Andy.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Santana.
Hey, I'm Santana Revels. I'm a pre-K teacher at Franklin Elementary School in Mount Airy, North Carolina.
Mount Airy. All right. What's that place just off the interstate, off 77 in Mount Airy, where you go and they have all the Andy and Barney memorabilia? The last time I was up that way, I stopped there. I had an intern go to the last exit on 77 before the Virginia line and make a left. There's a little elementary school, and their backyards in Virginia, up that way. But I haven't been there
Could
in
be
a
Cedar
while.
Ridge.
Yeah, had an intern up there, and so yeah, that's a good place. All right, Meredith.
I taught 4 years in elementary school. Then I went to a neighboring county and spent 11 years as an elementary TF, tech facilitator. Then I came back to my home county, which is Stanley. Spent 1 year as a middle school opportunity check coordinator, meaning if they got suspended, they came and sat with me for 3 to 5 to 10 days. Last year, I moved into a foods classroom, taught CTE, foods 1 and 2 last year. And then this year I was able to get back to my media tech job. So I'm at a high school, South Stanley High School in Norwood, as the media tech facilitator this year.
Yeah, that's a lot of the folks that I work with are from Stanley. Who's the principal there now?
They are on principal number 5 in 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's Chris Johnson.
That's why I asked. I knew
Yeah,
the
Chris-
one that was there the longest, but he retired, and since he retired, it's been a revolving door there, hadn't it? I hate that,
Yes.
y'all. That's a good place.
Yeah, it's the school is good. The kids are good.
Yeah.
We just need some leadership that will maintain and follow through.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wanting to make everybody happy, and we don't like conflict. We don't like to tell people no, and it's just kind of snowballing into a bit of a disaster, but
Yeah.
we're close to the end.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah. I never was cursed with that problem. But I know that it is one. But yeah, that's been a good place for a long time, and I'd like to see some stability there. It'd be a good thing. Tara?
Hi, my name is Tara Simmons, and I am the Education and Disabilities Coordinator for Rutherford County Schools preschool program. And I have been in preschool for 19 years, almost 20.
You're in Rutherford County?
Yes.
Okay. And where do you work out? Do you work out of the old Cool Springs building?
No, I work out of Carver Center.
Out of Carver, yeah, Carver Center. Down on Ledbetter Road.
Yes.
Yeah. A long, long time ago in a land far, far away, I taught school with Reton Lathan, who's the king. He's the king of Ledbetter Road.
Yes.
Him and Minnie.
Mhm.
And that's how old I am. I taught school with Reton.
He
We
lives
taught at the
right
old
across the
Central High
street.
School in Rutherford.
Yep.
I can't believe I still call it the new Central High School is what, 35 years old or so? Yeah. And so, yeah, Reton taught bricklaying.
Yeah, my mom taught at RS Central as well.
Who was your mother?
Janice Miller.
Yes,
She taught math.
yes. And Peggy Miller worked in the cafeteria. She was probably related as well. Her son Pig, Albert. Yep. Yeah.
Yep, those are my cousins.
Yep. I figured you had to be if you're from Rutherford County. Had to be. Albert played football for us. And Peggy used to feed us at the back table in the cafeteria because we always on yard guard for all the lunch shifts. And we just duck in the back and eat at the back table with the lunchroom ladies. All the coaches, they made us be on yard guard all the time.
That was the best eating though.
Oh, it was, because Peggy'd always fix something with gravy. It didn't matter what it was. When Peggy put that gravy on it, you'd eat it. She'd make a big pot of greens about every day. Yep. And so, no, my wife student taught at Ralston Elementary in Minnie's classroom. Minnie and who was Marley Sigmund's wife. I'm trying to remember Miss Sigmund's name, and Minnie had a 3rd grade classroom at Ralston. That's where my wife's student taught. That's exactly right. So that's been a day or two though. We used to go over every year to Riton's big party. Had that basement where I had all them cots in it, where all the family came in and slept. I might have napped there a time or two myself. Yeah, that was a good place. He worked with my father-in-law. That's how I made. My father-in-law taught drafting there, Bill Rogers, and so that I was with that crew. They all came in. A lot of them came in after World War II, and I was kind of at the tail end of them. But they were all about retirement age when I started. But good people, good part of the world to be in.
I love Mr. Lathan.
Yep, good folks. Did I get everybody? Did I miss anybody? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're missing a couple. Well, welcome everybody. Our job this semester is to change our lens. That's our job. You've heard that before, and I'm going to say it again. Our job is to change your lens from the perspective of a classroom person or a teacher to that of an administrator. And the biggest part of changing that lens is the law. That's law, and most of it is exceptional children law, it's finance law, it's disciplinary law, all those things. There's laws that go with all of that. And my job is to keep you from losing your house. Since 1992, I was actually a principal in Burke County, when every principal in the state of North Carolina had to be trained on the law that was passed on tort liability. That means that not only if something bad happens to a student of yours that you're in charge of, can the school and the district be sued, but you can be sued personally. And if it's an act of negligence, misfeasance, malfeasance, or nonfeasance, doesn't matter. You can be held personally liable financially. And that's a big deal. And we'll get to all of that this semester. So let me share my screen and let's start working through our shell right quick. So of course, here's our shell. Introductions, we'll meet Tuesday nights at 6. There's our syllabus. There's the grading scale. There's the link to join us every week. We will not meet the week of July 4th, whatever that night is that week. And I brought my calendar so I could say that I'll give you that week off. Well, I dropped my calendar. So whatever that one is. And so I'm guessing that would be June, July 5th, I guess. July 5th, we will not meet. But other than that, so we'll meet from tonight. We'll have 10 weeks that we will meet. We'll have that one night off. Make sure you complete the EVA, the enrollment verification activity. Just go in and select yes. Next steps, get your books. Principal's Guide to School Law, 3rd edition. If the 4th all is available, get the 4th, it'll be fine. And resource management. Now, this Principal's Guide to School Law is something that you're going to keep your whole career. You're going to refer to that thing from time to time. It's a pretty good book. It's not a waste of money. You should have already started reading case study 1 and planning your collaborative Zoom sessions. Again, there's a lot of work in those things, and I'll try to highlight some of the important parts of it so that you won't just come in and be completely lost when you present. But we'll do that in one of our later classes. Go ahead and start. I'm going to cover all the tasks of the OMA tonight, and then I'll cover them individually later as well. And then, so I don't know if this link to Dr. Caton and Maraglia's folder is still good. They've got a lot of documents, a lot of things that you can use as a principal. I don't know if it's going to open tonight or not. Let's see. Yeah. They've got a lot of things like acceptable interview, Title IX, cyberbullying. She puts stuff in every week that we can all share among the 603 folks. It's really good stuff. You know, policies that have been developed. She's principal at Aiden Grifton in Pitt County, Greenville, North Carolina. And so she works with us and puts a lot of those good little things in there as a sitting principal that are always good for us to have. So that's kind of an overview. Let's look at our weekly schedule. So this week, we're going to cover the OMA. I am going to talk about the skip briefly. I'm not going to cover it. Sometimes folks get ahead, and that's good. We always have some, you know, overachievers in the group, and I don't want to limit you. If you want to finish your OMA this summer and leap into the skip, I'll be glad to do that. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about facilities and budgeting tonight. These are the chapters that you should have read or should read this week if you've not already read them, that go along with what we'll cover tonight. And then your discussion board activities. Things you need to do: locate the copies of your school's emergency plan and your crisis plan. Those are two different things. Emergency plan is when you evacuate. Crisis plan is when you have something bad happen on your campus, and what do you do? How long did it take to find it? You know, was the crisis kit under the front counter in the main office where it's supposed to be? What was in it? You know, were the rosters updated? Were all the things, the maps, the cutoffs for the water and the power, were all those things in the box? You know, locate a copy of your school budget. Does it contain state, federal, local, and school funds? What, if anything, is missing? List the 5 most important steps in the school-based budgeting process. I'd ask a principal that one. And conduct a facilities walkthrough. Those are the things that you'll need to be doing this week. And I have documents that go along with all of those. So that's what we'll do this week. So let's dive right in. I want to start with, as always, we always start with the law. What is the law? Now, South Carolina, we have some South Carolina folks. You have a similar law, but I only do the North Carolina one because it's the same thing. These are the same things. But in South Carolina, you have 70 educational titles. We have 115C, 288 is one of 545 individual statutes in North Carolina. South Carolina has compiled theirs into smaller amount, covers the same amount of material. So 115C 288 is duties and powers of the principal. This can be found, let me show you how to find that under session 1. What you will find is the link to the North Carolina General Statutes. And as you can see, 115C, there's, you know, all of these. I mean, everything that you can think of is covered in a statute. As I said, 288. 288's duties and powers of the principals. It's got teachers. It's got superintendent. There's 545 of these. But tonight we're going to focus on the one that's most important to us, which is, what is your job as a school principal? First one is to grade and classify pupils. Now, surprise, surprise, our first case study is going to be based on grade and classify pupils. Well, cheating strike Bobby out. And so baseball coaches, Bobby's a baseball player. And we're going to do a case study on Bobby because it relates back to who actually assigns grades in schools. Not teachers. principal science grades in schools. That's your number one. That's first and foremost. That's why it's our first case study. To make accurate reports to the superintendent, improve instruction and community spirit, conduct fire drills, and inspect for fire hazards. This is why we're going to do a facilities walkthrough. And I've got a document. If your district doesn't have a document for facility walkthroughs, you can use mine. It's already in there. It's right there under the tab for tonight, Zoom session 1. These are all the things that have to be in order at your school: your traffic control, vehicular and human, your surveillance, your access inside and out, your safety devices and equipment, all these things, your safety provisions inside, all these things have to be squared away. Now, everybody knows that's sitting with us tonight, everybody's been in school a day or two. Everybody knows that you have to do a fire drill once a month. What everybody doesn't know is you're also required twice a month to do a safety inspection, document it, and turn it in. Duty of the principal, conduct a fire drill first week after the opening of school, and there one fire drill each month. Fire drill shall include pupils, school employees, those kinds of things. All right. Duty of the principal to inspect the building and discharge at least twice a month. At least twice a month, you have to do a safety inspection in your building. You have to document whatever you've done, and then you have to follow up. The big problem is folks will go around and document, and that's all they did was document. And then when something happens, they say, well, I wrote it down that needed to be fixed. Did you follow through and get it fixed? Well, no, it just said I had to document. No, that will fall under negligence. That would be called nonfeasance. You knew the right thing to do and didn't do it. That will fall under that standard that you'll read about in your book. And so that's a biggie. And you say, well, Dale, you're stressing this an awful lot. Guess what? Guess what? The first job that's going to be assigned to you when you get your job as assistant principal, that would be, it will either be conduct the facilities walkthroughs and or the bus lot. And you'll probably get both of them. But you will definitely, the lowest person on the totem pole always gets facility. And it's a simple thing, but it's one of those things that can, if neglected, can break your career before it gets started. If you have a fire, if you have something and it's documented and kids get trapped, or there's chemicals stored improperly, or fill in the blank and something goes wrong, and it could have been that way for years. You've always heard it's all fun and games till somebody gets their eye put out. Like, what that means is we could have ignored it for years. It could have been that way through the last 5 administrations at South Stanley. But when it goes wrong and you're in charge, then it's you. Everybody will have amnesia that it's been that way forever. And the people over in the maintenance shed won't know your name. Well, I turned that work order in a dozen times, and they'll have amnesia. We never heard that. And you are what in the law is known as the person responsible. So you'll need to make sure that you do a walkthrough at your school, and if they have a document that they use, some of them do it electronically, then you'll use theirs. If not, you'll use mine. All right. So you have to do a written report. There has to be documentation that you did that. The discipline students and assign duties to teachers regarding discipline well-being. We'll do a whole module on discipline and due process this summer. You'll need to interview an AP about what issues they have, or what their concerns are, or what their biggest issue is with doing discipline. I'll give you the answer now. It's time. To do due process properly takes an inordinate amount of time. But if you don't cross all the T's and dot all the I's, you'll be homeless. You'll lose all your possessions, because you have to follow due process law. Protect school property, report certain acts to law enforcement and the superintendent. And see, this is the one that catches a lot of folks, and it's been catching a lot of people lately. This is kind of the problem du jour in schools right now, is cover-ups. Kids report, I've been abused, I've been bullied, I've been sexually harassed, I have been sexually assaulted. And it seems like, just like the case at Myers Park. Now, full disclosure, I trained the former principal there. So I guess I bear some of the responsibility for him not doing the right thing. But I know he knew the right thing to do because I trained him when he was an AP at Northwest School of the Arts. But we've had a serious problem that lately that we don't want to report, or we want to call somebody in the central office. We want to get our story straight, or we want to enter into some kind of we call the police first. Always. When there's been a crime committed, we call the police first. If they're not in our building, if we don't have a resource officer stationed at our building, then we call the one that at the school nearby that's assigned to us if we're in the elementary, if it's that way. But one of the things that we don't want to ever be seen is that we call somebody else and we got our story straight before we call the police. No, the first call that you need to make is always to the police. You can see it right here in the law. It says law enforcement first and then the superintendent, doesn't it? That's intentional. Or the superintendent's designee. When I used to be the superintendent's designee in Charlotte, when I'd get those calls, what was the first thing I asked them? When I would get that call as the superintendent's designee from a school, that something inappropriate or something bad had happened, what was the first question I asked that principal or assistant principal?
Did you
Did
call
they
the
call
law?
the police?
Did you call the law?
Yeah.
Well, no, I called you first. Don't call me. Hang up, call the law. Then call me. But I'm not going to be a party to a conspiracy now where we're getting our story straight or what the cover-up's going to be. Phone records are easy to access nowadays, folks. And, it never looks good when you call somebody else. When it said clearly right here, law enforcement, then the superintendent, it never looks good when you call somebody else first. And so that's going to be one of the things that you're going to have to learn, is that people are going to be watching what you do. So you have to make sure that you follow the law in its entirety. To make available school budgets and school improvement plans. Now, without fail, there's only 11 of you in class. I thought there was 14, but I'll go out on a limb and say, even in a class this small, I'm going to get somebody whose response back to me is, my principal says we don't make the budget available to the public. Yes, you do. Because what does the law say? The law says you do. The law says the principal shall maintain a copy of the school's current budget and the school improvement plan, including any amendments to the plan, and shall allow parents of children in the school and other interested parties, that would be you and me, to review and obtain such documents in accordance with Chapter 132 of the General Statute. So when they tell you, no, we don't make the budget, yeah, you do. We need to see the budget. We're looking to make sure that the budget has federal funds, state funds, local funds, and then school funds. Does it have all four of those in it? Those all four have to be in the budget. Every dollar has to be transparent in public school. Now, charters are a little bit different. I'm going to go ahead and say that now. Charters are a little bit different, but it is still public money. There's still public money involved, and they have to maintain a budget as well. Charters are public schools. They get public funds, they get federal funds, and so they have to make their budgets available. They're generally not as comprehensive as public schools have to be, but they do have to be available to the public. They don't get a pass on that. To evaluate certified employees and develop action plans, that's what you did last semester. You remember when you did that professional growth plan, you had to do walkthroughs. You had to come up with an action plan for your teachers. I call mine MTSS for teachers. We'll look at it later. Transfer student records, sign driving eligibility, and establish school improvement teams. And there is documentation as to who has to be on the team. And then when you look at case studies, you have to look at all these laws. And then I'm going to ask you to also speak to the ethical paradigms, the four of those: justice, care, critique, and profession. Because sometimes sometimes it's more than just the law. There's ethical considerations involved as well. And we have to make sure that we're operating legally, but also ethically. I don't mean to call anybody out, but part of the reasons why I suspect, well, I actually know that some schools have a lot of principal turnover is not the legal stuff so much as the ethical stuff. Have you done the right things? And a lot of times that's how you lose support of faculties. Now, one of the common misconceptions in our business is, oh, if I discipline a teacher or if I get rid of a teacher, then the others won't like me. Well, it's not about being liked. You've got to do the right thing. We must be champions for our children. Let me say that again. You no longer teach kids, you now supervise adults as an administrator, but you still have to be that champion for kids, for students. And until you can let somebody go, a good person, simply because they can't teach, then you can't administer and you don't have the ethical concern needed to run a school. If you have somebody might be, the nicest person you ever met, but if they can't teach kids, if they're abusive to kids, if you're not a champion for those kids, then in the first case study, then you can't be an administrator. In our first case study, one of the things that folks say to me all the time is, well, if we discipline that teacher, the other teachers will be mad. Well, that's their choice to be mad or not. I would think that the better teachers would understand we can't do things like that to kids. That's inappropriate. In the first case study, the teacher broke the law and was unethical to boot. What are you going to do now, hero? You're the one in charge. And so I'm very excited in our fourth week to see what y'all come up with. That's going to be great. But again, all the things that we do are based around the law. The second of our case studies is based around Leandro, which is an ongoing for nearly 30 years now case about school financing. RAL's been doing and Raleigh's been doing a follow-up series because they've got a new judge. Judge Lee retired and they've got a new judge. But, I've watched it and I've been involved. Full disclosure, I was on the losing team, legal team that lost to Leandro back in the 90s. I was on that team, so full disclosure. And so the case was, Leandro case is about school funding, is how the money is divided up. North Carolina and South Carolina have flat grant formulas. That means you get a per pupil in schools. Charter schools get the same. And what the low wealth districts wanted was district power equalizing, where the state gave the higher wealth districts that had the ability to put more local money in the budget to give them less state money. So in the end, it balanced out. But of course, the ruling was no, the flat grant stays in place. And we'll talk more about this tonight that we do Leandro. But the issue that everybody seems to have forgotten is there was money that was supposed to come to try to help some of these low wealth districts. It's not been coming, and now the judge says that they have to give them $2 billion, and the legislature's fighting that. but everybody seems to have lost the most important piece of Leandro is how do you fund schools? And not did they give them the extra money or not, but if they actually funded schools, appropriate to the kids that you have, you wouldn't have to worry about that. But we still won't, 30 years later, we still won't tackle that. That case started in 1994, by the way. So again, school funding factors into a lot of these things as well. So that will be our second court case. Our third will be, the kind of, societal du jour right now, LGBTQ rights. And our fourth one will be exceptional children's and all the facets of that go along with exceptional children's and inclusion program and several other factors in that. So we try to make our case studies relevant to what's going on in the world today in school administration. We try to make it real. And so that's the 4 things that we will do. And so that's kind of an overview of the course this summer. I'm going to pause and catch my breath and see if you have any questions. You have a kind of a notion of where we're going to be going in the class this summer. Is everybody with me so far? All righty. So let's take a look at some of the court cases that have shaped modern education in the United States. All right, modern schooling started in 1954 with the Brown versus Board of Education. That was in Topeka, Kansas. And I'll be honest with you, nothing happened for 11 years. Nothing changed, nothing happened until the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1965. We set from 1954 to 1965, nothing happened. And then with the Civil Rights Act of 65, forced integration of schools. And so North Carolina started integrating schools, as most states did, in 1966. Now, I don't say that because I read it in the book. I was in school then, and I remember when it happened. And so for Tara, I was at Harris Elementary School. Mr. Bob Tate was the principal there. He just replaced Mr. Lionel Simmons, who was the first principal that I was there. And I remember when the first busload of students, I guess they probably came from, I'm trying to think, probably came from Doggett's Grove over in Sandy Mush, came arriving at school. I remember that like it was yesterday. I was in school there. So civil rights, 65, that really started the ball rolling for integration of schools. So everybody started in 1966. And that brought about school consolidation because we had a dual system and we didn't need a dual system anymore. When I was assistant principal, I was at New Hope in Rutherford. And we closed that school because it was one of the schools that survived integration, but not too long. And we closed it. It had an asbestos problem. But, some of the schools closed immediately. Then we had a consolidation. There was a time when there was a school on every corner. There were high schools all over the counties. And then some counties consolidated all the way down to one, like McDowell County, Richmond County, Scotland County. Several counties just have one. Rutherford County stayed with 3, which has turned out to be a financial boondoggle because they can't afford 3 high schools. And now they've got 4. They built another one at Isothermal back there in the Bill Lewis Learning Center. They've got the early college. So now they have four high schools in a county that, if they put them all together, would have been smaller than the high school I was principal at in Charlotte. Let me say that again. If they put all 4 of them together, it would still be 500 students less than I had at one high school out of 24 in Charlotte. So you can imagine the problem. So that's part of the argument on school funding is locals have to pay. Again, North Carolina exit capital funding. Now it's the locals' responsibility to build and maintain their buildings. And if they didn't choose wisely years ago or since then, and they're school poor. And that was part of the Leandro case is taking all the money we got locally from property taxes and business taxes just to maintain and build our schools. We need more money from the state. And part of that decision was you're managing your money poorly. The reason why you don't have any local money to put in schools for extra teachers or extra programs is because you're maintaining too many schools in your district for the number of students that you have. That's pretty much the way it is in poor counties all across the state. And nobody's right mind would they think a county with as few students as Rutherford County could support 4 high schools. Can you
I agree with
imagine the
that.
cost, the duplication? You know, I'm actually still I'm actually in Lake Lure tonight in my condo in the northern part of Rutherford County. So I can say this, but I can't say it too loud because I might get assassinated. And I advocated for this years ago. They should close all 3 of the high schools and move over to the community college. Got more than enough space and have 1 school in the county. But the county, Rutherford County, as small and poor as it is operating 4 high schools and a community college. Can you imagine how strapped they are for money at the local level? Because the state does not give you money for buildings or technology or the upkeep of your building. Now, Meredith is an IT person. And I'm guessing she could tell you how expensive education technology is. Not only the hardware, the enterprise architecture piece, but also the software part of it. That's all up to the local, unless you can get some kind of a grant. That's all up to the local. Buildings and technology, they suck up about 95% of the local budget. Where do you have any money left over to hire extra teachers or get extra support for at-risk kids? You don't, because it's all spent on buildings. There is your problem with public education. We're building poor.
And they just built another school. They built a middle school.
What I mean, it's amazing to me. I don't know why we think that kids can't have more than just a handful of folks in their building. You know,
and the population in Rutherford County is like 70,000 people, maybe. So it's very small.
Well, since the time, since the time that I taught school, I did a research project in 1980. And since that time, between now, how many years has that been? 42 years. There's 4,000 less students now than there were then in the county. 4,000 less students enrolled in school, and they have more buildings now than they had then. Help me make sense of that. They're building poor. The state of North Carolina is building poor on community colleges. There are 58 community and technical colleges in North Carolina. I said that right, 58. And that doesn't count the multiple campuses. My actual, my residence, official residence is at the last exit in Mecklenburg County. So I live in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. We have 5 campuses for CPCC in Charlotte, 5. I don't mean just a little building on, a little kiosk on the side of the road. We have 5 massive campuses for Central Piedmont in one county, 5, Central Piedmont Community College. And so a lot of those 58 community and technical colleges have pretty significant, satellite campuses that go with them. And the counties have to try to keep those things up. The state has to try to fund the teachers that are in them. We don't have, I think building wise, we have about 112 or 14 campuses across the state. We can financially support about 20, not 120, 20, and we have 114. So as you can see, this is all part and parcel of the financing problem that schools have. And that's a big part of this course is how do you get by with what you do? Now, one of the things that causes folks to do is mismanage money. They try to take money from different pots and put it all together to get something. It's against the law. You can't do that. We'll talk about that more. But this is a problem that started in 1966 with integration of schools and school consolidation. Some places did it right, others refused to. And those that refuse to are spending their money on buildings rather than kids. But you can't go in and say, well, I don't think it ought to be that way. That's what our second case study is about a superintendent who says, no, I don't accept that. I'm going to take money from this side of town and give it to that side of town. Not only is that politically a bad move, it's also illegal. It's against the law. The immediate past superintendent in Chapel Hill, Carborough, that's what she did. Chapel Hill, Carborough is one school district, but it's really the tale of two cities. Chapel Hill is affluent, well-to-do, mostly white. Carborough is not. And so when she came in, she said, we need to get some of the resources over to the Carborough side. And it was pointed out to her, Leandro ruling says you can't do that. Not only does it say that the state will not equalize the money, you're not allowed to at the local district level either. It went a step further. It not only said the state won't do that, you're not allowed to at the local level either. And she said, but aha, I know a way around this. According to North Carolina law, as a superintendent, I can spend up to $90,000 without school board approval. So she went out, so she knew she couldn't hire teachers because that would go to the permanent budget. And most teachers are paid for either by federal or state funds. Very few teachers on the local, because we remember, we've got to keep our buildings up. And so she went out and hired an educational consulting firm for $1 million and had them divide the invoices up, 12 invoices for just shy of $90,000. Well, a former principal who had a grandchild over in Chapel Hill side knew that that was against the law. That was one-time purchase of up to $90,000, not an ongoing contract. And of course, they fired the finance officer immediately and let her take medical leave until she resigned. But that's the kind of thing. Now, was her heart in the right place? Was she trying to do the right thing for at-risk kids? Absolutely. But you can't, the money is the money. You can't say, I'm going to take this and put it with that, or I'm going to enter into this. No, every line item in your budget, federal, state, local, and school level, has a law that says this is what you can spend it for, and you can't spend it for that. And so that's the notion here, is it all emanated from Civil Rights Act, schools starting to integrate. People didn't like that, said we're getting out, and states stepping back and saying, we're getting out of the school funding business because we don't like integration. We're going to get out of this. And they have put an almost unbearable burden on local districts to be able to fund education. But that's where it came from. It all traces back to those decisions in 1966. Of course, then in the same year in 66, we had elementary and secondary acts, titles 1 through 9. We'll talk about those in just a minute. Tara, go ahead. Just interrupt me. Just jump in. Let's have a conversation.
So I do have a question about the budget stuff you were just talking about. So can a school system establish, well, I mean, it's established. So it's Rutherford County Schools Education Foundation. So they have established an education foundation, which, from what I understand, is a separate pot of money. Mm-hmm. So can you kind of talk to that and how that kind of works?
Okay, let me share my screen right quick. And thank you for bringing that up. So, sources of school district income. This is a PowerPoint that we have under tonight's lesson. Federal money, and then we have sources of district income, and then we have sources of school district, and then building level is foundation money. So the notion of a foundation is, it's like fundraising. It goes under the same category, as you can see, as fundraising. So what that means is, when the foundation was set up in Rutherford County, they go out and solicit private money from private individuals. I think I've probably written them a check or two, and corporations. They donate to that, and then they're supposed to use that money to fill in the gaps for at-risk and where it's needed in the county. Because again, the county can't do that. Not only did Leandro say that the state will not give more money to poorer places than richer, that can tax themselves more and put more money in. But you can't do that with the local budget either. That's our second case study. The superintendent said, I'm going to take some of this money. I'll pull some from the wealthier side of town and give it to the poorer side. No, can't do that. And so you can create or establish a private foundation. You're allowed to do that as a school district, where you take private money, it's not tax dollars of any kind, where you can supposedly funnel it to those high risk and need areas in your district. Problem with that is getting the money. Where do you get that money from? Not that many people walking around in Rutherford County that make big money to going to give much. Part of the second part of that is not a lot of industry since all the mills left town, and Facebook just has a few employees that do custodial maintenance and security. It's just a server farm. They don't pay any taxes anyway. It's hard to get money. Now, Isothermal has a foundation, as you know, and they got enough money to build a building. And the purpose of that building is to generate revenue all the time. They rent it out. I was there quite recently for a wedding. They rent it out and they have musical shows, but that's separate from the college. But it's there to try to raise money that they have control of. See, when you look at having control of money, federal money is the tightest, then state, then local, and then school level. And what you want is to be able to have control of that money. Just like we were talking a minute ago. All right. Russell's a CTE teacher. That's federally funded. Federal funds are Title I. Title I teachers are federally funded. CTE, Exceptional Children's, EC, AIG, that's a federal program as well. Foreign language, second language, or excuse me, ESL or ELL. And what did I miss? EC 504. EC.
And for preschool, that's Head Start.
Yes, that's federal. If it's Head Start, that's federal. Now, if it's just a regular pre-K, it's local. That's state and local money. There is no federal money in regular pre-Ks. It has to be a Head Start. There's still 4 original Head Starts in Charlotte that get the federal money. The biggest one's over at Hickory Grove on the east side of town. But again, pre-Ks, that's state, unless it's a Smart Start, or there's also what they used to call Even Start, but I think those were always that. I think that was just state. But yeah, it has to be a Smart Start. It has to be federal. You get federal money. So those are the areas that's federal money. That's the tightest.
I have a question about the private money, like foundational monies. So is that money, does that budget have to be given out to the public or transparent? Was that something that they don't have to release?
They don't have to. They set those up as private foundations. And part of the reason why they do that is so they don't have to make it public. Now, if they give that money to the school, it must be reflected in their local budget, though. Let me say that again. That's kind of the back door on this. Most of the people, nearly all of the people that they would give it to have to report it and show it in their budget. But the foundation doesn't have to show their budget. You know, they have a director, they have people that work for them. They don't have to show what they're paying them because it's a private business. But when they give that money to a school, the school has to put it in their local, as I just showed you, they have to show it in their local budget right here. They have to show any grant money that they get, any foundation money, exactly what we're talking about, any partnerships, booster clubs, and fundraising. They have to show all of that. Absolutely. But the actual foundation, like Isothermal or the Rutherford County Foundation, the one that's, is it still up right in front of what used to be the Winn-Dixie, right there in front of Yelton Milling? They had a place right there a few years ago.
My understanding is that they have an office at the County office.
They've moved them. Yeah, they started out in what I think was right there next to Jack Flack's, the old tire place right there, in front of the Winn-Dixie, across from Yelton's mill, flour mill there. But they closed it down. I noticed the other day. I drove through there. I had to drive down through there. I was heading to Barley's to meet a group for lunch, and there in Spindale, and I noticed that place was closed. Now, I don't know. I think Janet got them that place down at Cool Springs before she retired as superintendent. Now, full disclosure, Janet's my first cousin, so if you want to say something bad, I'll probably say something just as bad. But the immediate superintendent that just retired is my first cousin, and so by marriage. But I'm married to a Harris. If you know anything about this part of the world, everybody in Rutherford County is either Harris or half a Harris. My wife's a full Harris. Janet's a half. Her mother was a Harris. It was actually my wife's father and her mother, brothers and sisters. So full disclosure on all these people we're talking about here tonight. I'm related to everybody in this part of the world. And so Janet pulled that off. Now, probably it wasn't the right thing to do, but Janet was known to do a thing like that every now and then. But I suspect that's how that happened. And so, but they are not under the auspices of the school system. I'm guessing they rent them that space or whatever. But no, you can't. They can't be a part of the district. They have to be private. I know Isothermals has a little office over in their building where their office is. But you know, some of that stuff gets a little convoluted sometimes. About the governance piece, but no, those foundations are private. But once they give a public entity the money, that they have to show that and show where it came from. It has to be reflected in their budget. But you know, I have no notion of how much money they spend on overhead, though. They don't have to report that. But that is one way that you can get money at the local school level. But unfortunately, there's not a lot of money that comes out of those kinds of things. It generally gets mostly eaten up by overhead. I mean, the notion of the foundation over at Isothermal, they've got a huge building and massive upkeep cost on that building. Had to take a note out to build it, a bond to build it. And then they've got maintenance staff and administrative staff. I don't think there's a lot left over by the time you get through with all of that. That's the problem with most foundations, is there's not a lot left. And I'm guessing by allowing them to move down to Cool Springs that it really cut their overhead tremendously to do that. I'm guessing that's probably why Janet did that. I could call her and ask her, but I'm guessing that's probably why they did that. Probably they borrow a little clerical down there and don't have to pay. I'm guessing that was pretty expensive. That's a pretty nice little building there that they were in. And I'm guessing it was right there in the commercial district. I'm guessing that was several $1,000s a month rent on that place. And I'm guessing they probably found out what everybody else is. It doesn't do any good to form a foundation to raise money to funnel to schools if you're using it all up on overhead. But yeah, you've got to account for every penny of that. If you get any as a school principal, it's got to be reflected in your budget, and you got to account for every penny of it. Now, the good thing about it is you have a lot more autonomy on how to spend it, though. I mean, the money that you raise at a school, whether through your booster club or fundraising, candy sales, whatever you do, you have a lot more. You have a lot more leeway with that money, but you still have to file a plan with your district, get the fundraiser approved, and there's still rules that goes along on what you can do to raise money and how to spend that. That's one of the documents that I have for us tonight under financial laws. That's under Zoom session 1. Let me share my screen. I've got that one pulled up. Wrong one. And that's also going to be one of your activities on fundraising, to interview one of your administrators at your school about fundraising, because there's a lot of policy at your local school district level on it. So here's the one from Charlotte, from CMS. I worked there the last 15 or 17 years of my career. All fundraising activities for middle schools and high schools are to be approved by the principal. And then the area superintendent and the superintendent has to approve that. You have to submit what you want to do in the first month, anticipated fundraising activities with projected revenues and expenditures. That all goes in a copy of the local budget. Here are the ones that are allowable. You don't see candy sale on there. I used to make a fortune selling candy when I was principal at Olympic. But they don't allow for candy sales anymore. I had a whole room dedicated just to candy. And I was, they had to buy the candy, the clubs, everybody had to buy the candy for me. And I made some on the front end, because I had a distributor that kept the room stocked with candy. And then when it was everybody, every 2 weeks, whatever club or organization, they had to sell from, so I made money on the front end and they made money on the back end, but they don't allow them to do that anymore. Here is the biggie on fundraising at the local school level. You got to be careful. You can't trade state and federal dollars for local dollars that you have control of. And you say, Dale, what craziness? What are you talking about? If you're a state teacher, the state pays and you're on the state payroll, that per pupil expenditure, most of it goes to paying teacher salaries. And if the state is paying your salary, they don't want you during instructional time that they're paying you for doing fundraising. And federal teachers, oh my Lord, they get bent out of shape in a minute over doing something like that, wasting instructional time on school fundraising. So you got to be really careful about that. Not be doing it during class time, instructional time, because somebody else is paying those teachers. You can't be using them to raise local funds at your school while somebody else is paying their salary. CTE, remember Title I, CTE, EC, second language, all those people, Title I, they're being paid by federal funds. You can't be using them during their instructional time. And then you have your state allotted teachers. You can't be using them either. And so it makes it kind of hard. And there's a lot of rules on keeping up with the money. You have to budget it. You have to get it approved. You have to account for every penny. If you're doing a ball game, if Cam's charging money at the baseball game, they have to ticket that. It all has to be receipted, has to be turned in same day, can't be kept at school. There's a lot of conditions on what you can do to raise it, and permissions and all that. But once you have it, you have a lot more autonomy on what you do with it once you have it.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So I guess they're calling it crowdfunding. Like Rowan County that I was in for 11 years, they were all about donors choose grants, Amazon wish list. Like they said, go for it, do it. Stanley County says absolutely not. It's against the law, can't do it. So is one person right and one wrong, or is it that gray area?
It's not
How does
gray.
that work?
What happens, back to Tara's question, what happens in a lot of counties, they set up a foundation to run it through. They basically are money laundering it through a foundation. Now, if you don't have a foundation, it is against the law to do that, but it's not for a foundation to do it. And so as long as they're the people of record as your foundation, you can do stuff like that. But no, it's illegal for a public school to do that.
So a teacher couldn't go on to Donors Choose and do their
They would have to submit it
grant
to the principal and get it approved.
Now that's a policy in Stanley County. Anything that goes on Donors Choose, the principal has to sign off
That
on.
is correct. So
Rowan County was a free for all.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But Charlotte Mecklenburg, it was absolute. You had to submit it before the school year started, during the work days, and it had to be approved if you wanted to do crowdfunding or GoFundMe or whatever. But you can't do that unless it's approved. Now, where you get into problems is like when I got to Olympic High School in the late 90s, mid 90s, they had a carpentry class there. We had a really good CTE department. Sims Reeves was our marketing guy. I think he went to Fort Mill. Dave Johnson and Wayne Sigmund was the carpentry teacher. And they all kind of got together and they built those little buildings, these little outbuildings. You've seen those built by the carpentry classes at high schools. Well, when I got there, one of the people, when you get to be principal of a school, there'll be a line out the door, especially a high school, of people that want a piece of you. When as soon as you walk in, and there's somebody from the central office will come in with what I call the book. Here's all the stuff that's been going on here that's illegal that you got to fix today. It's been going on for 20 years, and but you got to be the bad guy and fix it today. Like your photography teacher, and I said, wait a minute. Photography got taken out of CTE about 8 years ago. Yeah, your photography teacher, they're using an English position, and your English class is in the 10th grade are overloaded because one of your English teachers is still teaching photography. A CTE program that was closed 8 years ago, but he's got a real nice lab, but you're going to have to call him in and tell him that he can't teach photography anymore. And you're going to have to call Wayne Sigmund in and tell him he can't build buildings anymore. Well, why can't Wayne build buildings anymore? Well, because the local Mays Manufacturing is mad that he's selling buildings cheaper than people are complaining. But I said, he just builds one a year. Well, it doesn't matter. They're mad because, they can't compete with his prices with free labor. And so that's another piece of fundraising is you can't compete with local businesses. So what had happened with the photography is Strawbridge and Life Touch had basically subcontracted to the photography teacher to take pictures for them and developing in the lab there at school. That's how, so you can't beat them, join them. So they got him to do that. But the problem was Wayne's, but federal programs had been closed and they were using a state position, English position to fund that photography class. Can't do that. And then on Wayne's side, the deal over there is he was competing against private business and they were pitching a fit. And so, those are the kinds of things. And so part of what you learn in this course, or hopefully you learn in this course as we walk and talk through this stuff is, folks, you've got to find out what all the rules are in your district. And that's kind of the bottom line on fundraising is whatever the policy is in your county, you better learn it and find out what it is. And a lot of the stuff that we're going to be doing this semester, we go and get stuff is just like hiring. Hiring is different in every county. It's different from public to private to charter. It's all different. Employee assistance and benefits is different in every county. You got to find out how it works in your county. The important thing is find out how it works and then follow that so that you don't break the law. Because you're exactly right. Meredith is exactly right. It's different in Charlotte than it is in Stanley. It's different in a charter. With Kaylee, it's different there than it is in a straight public school. They're both public schools. And I'm gonna put a plug in for charter schools right quick. Please don't be that dumb person who thinks that when the state allots money per pupil, that they give it all at the beginning of the year. They do not do that. They divide into 10 installments and you get it monthly. And you got to pay yourself the first month and then they reimburse it. That's called the modified accrual accounting system. So say, for example, that the state allots $8,000 per pupil to a school to run the school. Most of that's going to go to teacher salaries, but they're not going to give the whole $8,000 on the first day of school. At the 20th day, that's the first month of school. Every how many you've got on the roster, they will give a percentage of that. They don't even give all of that. And they give 1/10 of it. So they give $800 for that student, but they subtract your absenteeism. That's why take and roll every day is such a big deal. The state only pays you for the kids who come to school. That's called the PMR. If you can't remember it, write it down. PMR, Principal's Monthly Report. And what that is attendance. And so they subtract the percentage of your absenteeism by district from how much they give per pupil. So if your attendance rate for that month is 95%, they subtract 5%, 5 times 8 is 40. Instead of getting $800 per pupil, you get 760. That is correct. They subtract your attendance. They only pay for the ones that come, not the ones on the roll. And they don't pay at all. So if a child starts out, one of the common knocks on charter schools is, well, they started out at charter school and came to us and they got all the money for that kid. No, they didn't. They got 1 month's worth. And then when he was at your place, you got the money from right on after that. That's not the way funding works. You get it in 10 monthly installments, and you get it after the first month, not before. You have to have your own startup money. Yes, question.
Okay, Dr. Lamb, yeah, I do have a question. I know you said that each county sort of is different, but how is there different if the law of the whole state is supposed to be like the book that we're reading, the law book?
Yep.
If law is the same across the state of North Carolina, how are counties different, I guess?
All right.
Or why are they different?
Because of money.
Oh.
Okay, when I was principal in Burke County, I had hair back then, and I had to wear a hairnet and serve lunch. I mean, I had to drive the bus. I had to hire the custodians, and if one was out, I had to sweep the floor. If one of the lunchroom ladies was out, I had to get in the lunch line and serve when I was principal of the school. Do you think I did any of that when I was principal in Charlotte? I wore a fine suit of clothing every day. I wore $800 shoes and a $2,000 suit every day. And didn't have to do any of that because we had money and we hired people to do all the, I didn't even have to hire and fire the custodians, cafeteria ladies. No, none of that. Had a group that did that, didn't have to monitor the custodians, had a group that came in and made sure the school was clean. Didn't have any of that when I was in Burke County as principal. Obviously, Tara can tell you, I didn't have as much in Rutherford County as I had in Burke County, especially when I was down to Ellenboro. We didn't have a pot to pee in or a window to throw it out of. We had to run the county fair to have enough money to buy paper for the copy machine. And so it's all about money. So for example, if I said, what is the hiring process in your district? I can tell you in Burke County, I had to advertise in the paper. I had to get their resumes and vet all of them. I had to call all their references, had to do, you know what I did in Charlotte? I simply picked up the phone and called my analyst in HR and said, send me 3 candidates. I've got this job opening. They'd already done all of that, all of it. All I had to do was go eeny, meeny, miny, mo and pick the one that I wanted. You don't do that in a poor district. And you better make sure you vetted them, called their references, done the background check, and done all that stuff, because if something goes bad, it's on you. And so although the process may look from the outside that they've got to apply and be vetted, but who does that work? There wasn't anybody. What I'm telling you is when you said, come on, gang, when I was in Burke County, you turned around, there wasn't no gang, it was you. When I was in Charlotte, I had somebody do something for everybody. When I was a senior high, I couldn't have been more pampered as a senior high principal in Charlotte. I had 6 assistant principals, a personal secretary, and 2 admins. That's why I wear a nice suit and clothes every day, because I didn't do anything. I couldn't have picked a broom out of the lineup. All we did was go to meetings and wear nice clothes and be on camera all the time. We didn't actually work. We had people that did the work. I had an analyst in HR, and it was her job to get applicants, advertise, bring people in for me and a couple of other schools. I had a section to have me candidates waiting when I wanted them, and all I had to do was say, I want that one. That was all my job. That's all I had to do. I want that one rather than that. But when I was in low wealth districts, you did everything. You monitored the custodians, you hired and fired the cafeteria ladies, custodians, bus drivers. Do you think I didn't even have, we had a transportation department in Charlotte, they hired the bus drivers. When I was AP at Central High School, where's Tara? When I was AP, when we changed from student drivers to adult drivers, you remember that? That was me. Drove a bus every day and made all the other coaches that hide from me back in the back of the weight room, trying to keep me from finding them, making them drive buses. In a low wealth county, it's just you. When you get to a high wealth place, the rules are different. But in the end, you got to do the same things, but who's going to do that work? You got to know how it works in your district to make sure that you don't make a mistake. I had a financial secretary that I didn't have. I just had a secretary in Burke County, and she had to keep the books, and I had to help her. I had a financial secretary. That's all she did in Charlotte. By the way, my financial secretary from the junior high, today is his birthday. I saw on Facebook today. Todd Kimbrell. I'm gonna never forget Todd. I don't know how old he is, but I still remember him as a young fella. He was just my financial secretary. That's all he did. He didn't have to answer the phone or be the school secretary. He just did the books. You don't have that in a low wealth district. You're lucky to have somebody that that can answer the phone, much less keep the books. So a lot of times you end up doing it yourself as principal in a low wealth district. If you don't want to have to go to jail, you keep the books yourself. Again, you got to keep them the same way, but the deal is who keeps them. Who goes out and when I was at Oak Hill and Morganton, I didn't even have an AP. I couldn't assign the AP to the bus lot or do the twice monthly inspections. I didn't have one. I had over 1,000 kids and I was there by myself. You did it all. But that's part of what you got to learn is you learn it at the school that you're at now, but you got to learn it's a transferable skill. When you go to your first AP job, if it's a different district or a different school, first thing you start asking is, how's this done? How's that done? How do we do this or that? That's why we had you going out asking those people. Due process is the law, but different schools handle it different ways. They all have to follow the law, but how it happens. One of the things that I did when I reorganized due process at Olympic High School, what I did was I took it from being alphabetized to first come first serve, create the bullpen. I put all the APs, I had 4 of them that processed discipline. One was just an API, she just did instruction. And I had another one that was APA that just did facilities. But I had 4 that processed discipline. I put them in a bullpen in basically a kind of a hub and wheel design. You walked into and there was a lobby and then their offices out off of it. And whoever came in, I had a person checking them in, and whoever was next up took that person. And so we didn't have a bunch of thugs sitting there in the office, and we moved it out of the front office to a back hallway where it wasn't right there in the front of the building where everybody that came in, God and everybody saw all your business, and moved it back there. But it was first come, first serve. Instead of somebody sitting there for 2 or 3 hours waiting on their administrator to get free that was handling a drug case or a weapon or something big. No, next up takes this one. Now, we still did due process, but how we organized was different. And so our turnover time got much greater. We got better at it, where we didn't have 100 kids standing around down in A12 all day waiting to get processed. And then the fight would break out in A12. Now, how smart is that? You have a room that you're holding them so they can get processed, and now they're fighting in there. I mean, that was just self-inflicted dumbassery. We had to fix that immediately. That was just, so these are the things that you've got to learn is, well, how do we do this at our place? How do we go about hiring people? How do we go about doing our budget? What is the process to developing a budget? The cornerstone of what we do is the school improvement plan. But the base of that triangle is the budget and the master schedule. How do we go about developing a budget? Does the school improvement team have a voice in the budget? That's going to be in the first task of the OMA is, do you have a voice? Do they have a voice in the budget? How in the world can your budget support the school improvement plan if the school improvement team doesn't have a voice in the budgeting process? Those are the kinds of things that you got to ask and you got to find out. How is school really run not what's the law and what's theoretically. How does school actually work? When the bell rings, when the gong goes off, you know, for us at Olympic High School at 6:45, when the gong sounded, what do we do after that? You know, it's got to be more than bell ring, go to class, bell ring, go to next class. I mean, how do you run school? How does that happen? What makes the magic? You know, how do you organize to be as successful as you can be and run a tight ship where all the money gets spent the proper way, kids get everything that they need, you make sure their rights are upheld, all those things that you serve all your special populations. Everybody comes to the building that day, gets what they need, including the faculty. How do you make sure that happens? That's what this course is about, and what the OMA is about, is making sure that you're able to do all those things. And so while the law is the same for everybody, how we divide it up and get the work done is completely different. But it's based on wealth. I'll just tell you. You know, I hope you folks, I hope I'm not shocking you folks that money matters. It's all based on wealth. Just that simple. If you got money, you know, you got more folks to do things. If you don't, you have to figure out ways to get it done. That's the way the world works. And that's what those things going out and asking those people, that's part of what, you know. And so it's like five most priority items in budgeting. It's going to vary according to what school you're at and how wealthy you are and how much money you get from the local. You know, pretty much, let's say you're in Robinson County, down at Lumberton, St. Paul's. The state gives you $8,000. You don't really have any more money to put into it, into a school than that. You're just trying to keep up facilities. If you're in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, the local pretty much matches the state. You get another $8,000. Yeah, per pupil. And so that means you can do a lot more things, that you can have a HR department that actually does HR things rather than you having to be an HR person. You know, you could hire hire people that manage custodians and bus drivers and lunchroom people. You have all these departments that do all these things. That's where that local money comes in.
And
all
is
that
that what
support
the local
service.
supplement comes from as well?
Yeah, exactly. In Charlotte, Mecklenburg, you get 1.5 salaries in the summertime. So, for example, if you make $4,000 a month in the summer, you get 2 checks for $3,000 in the 2 months in the summer. And so, yeah, that's where that comes from as well. Local tax base. Exactly where that comes from.
I looked at our pay schedule and I saw that, and I'm not sure if it's this, I'm thinking it's the state's pay schedule that I looked at, and it said that assistant principals will no longer get a local supplement.
It's
Or is
rolled
that
into
just
their
for county?
Well, what that means is there was a 1% supplement that came along with it from the state. They've rolled that into the salary now, theoretically. But you know how that is. I mean, that's some of that fuzzy math, as Dr. Bull says. You know, that's how that works. But no, they don't have a separate. It was called a safe school supplement. It was 1% for APs. But now they have rolled that into the salary so they could say that you got a raise without actually giving you a raise. That's what they did that for. But locals can pay additional on top of whatever, like let's say when I went to Charlotte and on the salary scale, I'd been principal for a few years when I went. Let's say, we'll just use round numbers. Let's say that that my state salary said that, you know, this has been several years ago, 30 years ago, that my salary would be $50,000. So Charlotte said, if you'll come, we'll pay you 75. They had to make up the 25 differential between the state salary and what. So, but they did that in contracted basis. And then when I became a high school principal, you know, it was, you negotiated your contract. And so I had a person the other day that I was working with, Sean Perry, who took a job down in Marion, South Carolina. He was in Hope County, and he got a principal job down there. And he said part of the problem is they don't have much of a local supplement. I won't make much above the state pay, so I really won't get much of a pay raise from going from assistant principal to principal. And I have to work 2 more months. I said, well, you went to a low wealth county. They can only pay you the state rate. They can't add anything local to it. That's the way it works. Pick better, go to a wealthier place. But then the downside of that too is what people don't understand when you do that. 30 years ago, I built a house at Lake Norman. If anybody knows about anything about Lake Norman, yeah, my salary went up, but my cost of living quadrupled as well. I can't sell my house at Lake Norman. I couldn't replace it. That same house is worth 4 times what I paid for it in the mid 90s now. 4 times what I paid for it. The house next to me sold recently, and it sold for $150,000 more than the listing price. And it was a fixer-upper. They've spent $500,000 on it since they bought it, fixing it up, and bid it $150,000 above the asking price. Yeah, you can make more money working in Charlotte, but where are you going to live? I mean, it's hard to find a place that that you won't get mugged going to and from your car or shot in your house for anything less than several $1,000s a month. So yeah, you make more, but but also the cost of living there. So there's balances, and see, that's part of what Sean was talking about in Marion, South Carolina, that he was living in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and working in Hope, but that his cost of living would be cut in half. Yeah, he'd make the same salary, but he could afford, either a much nicer house or the same house he's in now for probably half of what he's spending on it in Fayetteville. And so in real terms, in real money, you have to look at that as well when you're looking at salary schedules. And that's one of the things that you have to talk to them about. Now, as I've told you, that's once you get to the job offer stage, you start talking about the money, not during the interviewing stage. Because most of the people interviewing you have no idea how much money they're going to pay. It's not their job to know that. But yeah, higher wealth districts can pay higher supplements and do contracts and pay more. Lower wealth, pay the state rate. Teachers, the thing about it is charter schools are involved in some of that now. Charter schools vary the amount of money that they pay their teachers. I've got one of my doctoral students, Kate Alice Dunaway, is an executive in charter school. She's in Invest. They've got Pine Lake Prep in Mooresville and several of those. And one of the things that they do is if you're a PE teacher, you don't make a lot. You don't make the state rate. But if you're a chemistry teacher, you might make more than the state rate. Because they get a lump sum for salaries just like public schools do. But again, that's based on need and availability. Well, out in the lower wealth places, they don't have as much money. But then on the backside of that, if you're willing to live there, the cost of living is less. So all these things are part and parcel of the funding of education. Public dollars versus private dollars on the foundation. Kelly says ours are similar. We're able to pay critical roles a higher salary. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was talking about. When Lake Norman Charter opened 20-something years ago, the first year they were open, they didn't have a math teacher. Gigi came down. My wife was out in the yard, and she came down and said, "We're so excited the girls got into the charter school. So we're concerned they're not going to have math this year." I said, "Wait a minute, you caught my attention now. What do you mean they aren't going to have math this year?" "Well, they couldn't find a math teacher, so they got a music teacher instead." I'm like, "Wait, what?" But the truth of the matter was, it was a startup charter school. It's since done very well, by the way. Got a nice facility. But they started in mobile units. The state law, by the way, says that state has to provide charters classroom spaces. That means disused mobile units. That's all they have to give them in terms of facilities. So they give them all the old used mobiles from North Meck High School when they built Hopewell and opened Hopewell, and they, 1,000 kids left North Meck, went over to Hopewell. They gave all the trailers went right up, literally a half a mile up Statesville Road on the right going north, and they moved them up there and started the charter school. They used all those old disused mobiles from North Meck and started the charter school. Well, they were scrambling around the first year, and they could have found plenty of math teachers if they'd been willing to pay. They just weren't willing to pay what a math teacher would have cost. They got somebody to teach music and probably paid them what a teacher assistant made. But after they kind of got themselves on the ground financially, the next year they had a math teacher, but kids went a whole year without a math teacher. Now, Craig Smith's the head of school there now. I trained Craig when he was AP at Hopewell, and he would never put up, Craig's a fabulous young man. Does a great job as the head of school there. Now, Andrew Masseri came through our program. Andrew's head of school at Pine Lake Prep. I have great respect for both of those young men. Well, they're not really that young anymore, young compared to me. But, those are kind of some of the horror stories from back in the past, charter schools. But charter schools, by and large, the good ones they're just like any other public school. There are good ones and they're not good ones, but the good ones are really good. But again, they have more leeway. So if Cam came to work for me and I'm in a traditional public school in North Carolina, the state sets his salary and that's what he makes and his benefits. But in a charter school, Cam's a PE teacher, I can pay him less so that I can pay and get me an EC teacher over here. Because EC, they're like finding the hair on top of my head, EC teachers. I got to pay them more. And so, but now public school can't do that. I hired an EC teacher one time and she stayed with me 2 weeks. And she said, these kids are too low. I said, you do understand that we hold some truths to be self-evident. That's why they're exceptional children. They're lower than the other kids. So I just wasn't expecting that. And so she left me after 2 weeks. And I struggled for a whole year trying to find somebody to replace her. Now you can find people, during the season, during the summer when people are moving around. But I'm telling you, once the school year starts and you don't have an EC teacher, you're toast. You're hosed. And them parents, they talk ugly to you too. They get mad when you don't have somebody in the room. And so I had an EC teacher that left me. The supervisor from the EC department came out and had some unflattering things to say about her. And she said, I don't have to put up with this. Said, Teddy will hire me up at Statesville. Teddy Millsaps was principal up there, and she lived in Bluestone Harbor, right across from me in Crown Harbor in Cornelius. It was actually closer to go to Statesville High School than it was back to Charlotte to the high school there. And she just left me high and dry. Boy, I tell you, I had a time. The only thing that saved me there was troops to teachers in Charlotte. We had a lot of back the peace dividend after the wall fell in Berlin, and a lot of the mid-level people in the military that were from first lieutenants, captains, and majors, they rifted hundreds of thousands of those guys out of the military, and we had a pipeline to those guys in Charlotte, and that's what I did. I took one of them and put in there. And that's what we had to do during that time. But we're going to come back to that critical time again because of COVID. So many people retiring. There's a bubble of us who were baby boomers who were born between 1945 and 1959. What few of us are left are about to give it up. And we're going to see shortages like we've never seen before. We're going to have to get creative in how we pay them and how we find them. And you're going to have to be able to talk to people and get people to believe in you as an administrator to get people to come. It's going to be tough. You're going to be like, I had 37 vacancies when I took over a junior high in Charlotte one time. And I was out on Central Avenue flagging down cars. Can you teach school? It's going to be about that way again. And so if you know how all this stuff works, and these are the kinds of questions that you ask in preparation for a job. Now, Maggie's in Henderson County, up on top of the mountain. not too far. I can go up through Batcave and be there in just a few minutes from where I am now. But she's in a situation there where just one county away, it's a completely different economic situation there than it is one county, one county over. And then in between us kind of is Polk County, is worse than both, is lower than that. But it's all, you can't just say, I'm going to go to this part of the state or that star or South Carolina. It's all the local. I mean, Henderson County is doing pretty well economically. And so they have a lot more things there. They do things a lot differently there than they would in Rutherford County next door because of money, because of the financial situation. The point is the state does not step in and balance that. That's where we started this. This is the benediction here. You should be able to hear Just As I Am playing in the background. We started with Leandro about the state refuses to equalize these things. They allow these inequities to occur so that you have a Rutherford County and a Henderson County literally touching one another. And one of them is doing great economically and the other is not, but the state says, hey, that's okay. Hands off. Not our problem. And not only is it not our problem, the superintendent in that district cannot fix that problem, cannot move resources around. They have to go exactly to where we say they go. That's how funding works in North and South Carolina. It's heartbreaking at times, quite honestly. Amanda?
My husband actually went to Mooresville High School and we talked about Mooresville City District.
Yes.
Because that's a big bubble that they keep trying to infiltrate. Like Iredell County tries to like make them part of them so they can spread the love of money, but they don't. So like it's all within that area.
Yeah. And what's his name? Mooney, Stephen Mooney is retiring. That superintendent there. He's only got 29 years in, but he's had enough. So he is retiring. Now, I worked with Bruce, who's the former superintendent, Bruce Boyles. He was superintendent in Mooresville City. And so in North Carolina, there's 100 county school districts for the 100 counties, but there are 14 vestiges of the old system of city school system, Mooresville, Weldon. There's several of those. There's 14 of those still around. And they tend, just like Mooresville City, is well off financially. And so the county keeps trying to raid them because they want that money. They want to consolidate them. Now, where Gardner-Webb is Cleveland County. That's one county further east from Rutherford. They forced them to consolidate and got all of the money from. So what used to be Shelby City, and then there was Kings Mountain City and Shelby City, and then the county had Crest and Burns. They're all one district now. They wanted the money from Kings Mountain. That's where the real money was in Kings Mountain. And so they forced them. And then of course up in the Triad area, High Point was consolidated into. And in Greensboro City and High Point City were consolidated into Guilford. And Wake, Raleigh was considered. Charlotte was, Charlotte and Mecklenburg were consolidated. And of course, you have some folks who have tried to fight, like in Matthews, to split them off, and Cornelius split off. That was started by Tom Tillis some 20 years ago. Their group was called Fume. Got a bunch of rednecks that didn't know any better, that didn't realize there was state law that you couldn't do that, and had them show up at every public meeting and act ass. That was him and that bunch. But there's laws that says you can't do that. Well, so if you split off, how would you pay for your facilities? It'd be like charter schools. You'd have to figure out where you get the money for your facilities. State doesn't give you that money. I mean, we had a fellow in Charlotte who ran to get into the General Assembly on the idea that if I get to Raleigh, I'll make them give us more money for schools in Charlotte. They don't give us any now, you nitwit. We got out of school funding in 1966. Where have you been? This didn't happen yesterday. I mean, I was a kid in short pants when this happened. What are you talking about? But that's the misconceptions that people have about schools and funding. They don't understand that every piece of money you get has strings tied to it in terms of how you can spend it and what you can spend it on. Federal money is the tightest. Again, it pays for CTE, EC 504, gifted, English as a second language, and your Title I program. And then the next is your state money, which mostly pays teacher salaries, your local money, which has to keep up your building, and then your school money, which, keep up the copy machine, to pay for uniforms, for the ball clubs, all those kinds of things. That's local. And your budget should reflect all of those things. Now, quick story on Title I money. There is a difference between being a Title I school and having a Title I program. So I was down in the eastern part of the state. When you go around the curve in Raleigh, around the loop, and you head south on 40, 40 runs from west to east, and you get to Raleigh, then it turns straight south and heads to Wilmington. And after you go around the curve there, the first exit is exit 306, is the Jones Sausage Road. My famous joke about that is, you know what they do at Jones Sausage, don't you? They make sausage. You know what we do in school? We teach kids. That's our core competency. But when you go around the curve and you get about halfway between Raleigh and Wilmington, there's Highway 42 that goes across the state over to Topsail Island, Topsail Beach. And it's about 100 miles across there. And it's so far out in the middle of nowhere that your GPS just sets and spins. So I went to this school, and I literally had to go up a man's driveway and through his carport to get to the school. Can't make this up. They had paving the road, detoured me through his yard, out in the middle of nowhere. I swear I'd run out of gas. No cell phone service, no GPS. Point of the story is, you couldn't find this place hardly with a helicopter. What are the odds that when I get there that he's having a Title I audit, that they just dropped by unannounced, just saw his school as they were passing it and decided to have a Title I audit? None. What happened is he forgot the priority and schedule, which is federal law comes first, federal programs, then state programs, then and state law, then local board policy, then best practices, which is EVOS, and then and only then teacher input. That is the process for building a master schedule that we'll talk about next week. He forgot that. So all the third grade teachers were mad at him, said, we want you to, how come this teacher over here has just got 12 in her class? We got 32 in ours. And so they twisted his arm and they made him balance the loads. And so I'm sure that later that day, the first thing that the Title I teacher did, which is a federal program, was picked up the phone and called Raleigh and said, I got 20 kids in my class that aren't Title I kids. They showed up the next day and now I had to wait an hour to see him. I was doing, the school visit for an intern. And the bad part was I had to go back 2 weeks later and meet the new principal. You don't misspend federal money but one time. You don't get a second chance on federal money. And so he forgot that federal law trumps teachers being mad at you. And he misspent that money. So here's the deal. If you're a Title I school, every kid and every teacher in the building can share in all the Title I. But if you're a Title I program, those teachers can only have Title I kids in their room. And only Title I kids can share in Title I money. What's the difference? It's the percentage of free and reduced lunch that you have. If you're 80% free and reduced lunch or above, you're a Title I school. Everybody, all the money can be spent anywhere you want to. If you're only 50% free and reduced lunch, you are a Title I program. And only the Title I kids can be in that Title I teacher's room. And if you put even one extra kid in there, you have misspent federal funds. That's one time, that's one and done. You misspend federal money, like EC money, understanding, one of my good friends in Charlotte was principal at Vance High School, but not for long, unfortunately. They didn't seem to understand that when you change a kid's placement, so a kid, you can only suspend a kid for up to 10 days. And after that, you've got to do manifestation termination. But if it's a pattern, it's after the third time. And any change in placement counts against that 10 days. So in-school suspension counts, out-of-school suspension counts, sending them to ISS or whatever, it doesn't matter. And so what was happening is they were sending kids home and they were counting them present. Can't do that with EC kids. When you get caught misspending federal money, there is no recourse. There is no I'll pay it back. There is none of that. The district will pay it back, but that you will go home. So you have to know all of those things. And so that's all part and parcel of that. We'll continue down our list of court cases next week. I got to where I wanted to tonight. We'll kind of work off that this summer as we go. I do want to, I see I've still got 7 minutes, I believe, just right on time here. So let me share my screen. I can close some of this stuff. Now y'all gonna have to just start butting in and interrupting and just talking. We need to have conversations here. So let me close that. So let's quickly look at the OMA. Now, we're not in any big hurry on this. We've got 10 weeks to do 4 tasks. And that's why I said, I just want to introduce it to you tonight. I'm going to go over it more next week. But I want you focusing on your reading and your activities this week. And we'll jump into the OMA a little bit more. After the first couple nights of my rants, it'll make more sense to you is what I'm saying. The OMA can be a bear on task 1 in that if you don't know what you're looking for, it becomes a scavenger hunt. Next thing you know, you've got 120 pages for task 1. You kind of got to know what you're looking for. And the first couple nights of class will help you kind of wade through, oh, I need this and don't need that. And so if we look at our task, and remember, your template this semester will only have just the task and the prompts and the directions. Just leave them there. It's not going to have any, little clues and that kind of stuff. I've got some things for you, but it's just this. You just add your stuff in there. And so for task 1 here, you've got to do an analysis of school context at the internal and external levels to include demographic information regarding students and staff that places this information within a state and national context. So the external analysis, what you need is like the opening section of your accreditation document that speaks to what's the average income in your school community, what's the level of education, average home price, where do people work, average education level, what does your community look like? That's the document that you're looking for. You've done a school profile in both the AppSell and the AppTel. That's about 90% of it. Just add a few of those figures if you don't have them. And it will be in the introduction section of your either Southern Association or your advanced ed that's now called Cognia, your accreditation document. It will have that information in the front of it. And then probably what you've probably got 90% of that. You need your master schedule, you need your duty roster and your supervision schedule. Now, master schedule is your master schedule of courses, who teaches what, where, and when. Duty roster is who covers bus duty, car duty, hall duty, lunchroom duty during the day. All your duties. And then supervision schedule is for your after school activities. Who, what, where, and when. Teacher handbook. Need all the information from your state report card in terms of teacher quality. The biggie, don't forget, we need your academic achievement. How well your school's doing academically. We need all that we need those things. We're gonna do an audit of all of our special POPs, which means again, EC 504, Title I, AIG, all of our federal programs. We're going to do an audit of them. This is what we got, and this is what students are supposed to be getting. All programs for exceptional learner, diversity education, special needs. That's all your federal programs. Got to have all of that. And then we need your budgeting process. You need a copy of your budget, but your budget, how do you go about doing it? Do you start out with your federal programs? Does the school improvement team involved in this? That you take your school improvement plan and say, all right, our priority this year is math. Do you do that? Do you start out with, with that in mind? How do you go about developing that budget? Is that school improvement team involved in that? These are the kinds of things that you're going to need to start looking for to make sure that you have these things. Let me get back to here. I've got an OMA example in here. Let's see. Everything that's under the different weekly ones are under the one that says materials if you want a shortcut to those. We'll talk about task stream later as well. Syllabus, weekly schedule, peer reviewing. I'm just making sure I've hit everything that I wanted to hit tonight from my notes here. Yeah, and so we'll talk about you can see the different topics that we'll be covering the different nights. That title, the discipline, those kinds of things. 7. Yeah, all those things. And so don't forget to look at your weekly activities. Again, I have them on the weekly schedule, but they're also, you can just click on the discussion board and see those, the things that you'll need to be doing every week. When we get to the appropriate place, when we get to task 3 and we start talking about the master schedule, I have a PowerPoint that will lead us through that. That's really good. That talks about all the things that we need to pull together for that. But start gathering your external context in terms of the stuff from your advanced ed or SACS report about your external community, the community your school's in. I mean, what does Flat Rock look like? What does Rugby look like? What does Hendersonville look like? I mean, where is your school located? What does it look like? And then, internal teacher equality, advanced certification, highly qualified, advanced degrees, all of your academic measures, your standardized testing, all of those, what does your school look like? Everything from the state report card. What kind of special POPs programs or federal programs do you have? What are they supposed to get? Is it an inclusion model? Is it a mainstream model? All of those things. And then how much input does your school improvement team have in the budgeting process? Those are the kinds of things that we want to get together, and we'll be able to talk more about next week. Now, again, next week, I want more of y'all talking, asking more questions. You don't have to raise your hand. We need to have a conversation about this stuff. But you've asked wonderful questions. You paid attention tonight. And I'm so glad the question came up about, well, if the law is the same, why is it the same everywhere? That's just, that's the variation that you have. And you've got to learn how we do business is according to where we're working. Again, I worked in 4 districts across North Carolina, 2 high wealth and 2 low wealth, completely different experience. It's completely different. Couldn't have been more different. Wasn't even the same job. And so you've got to kind of figure all of that out. And then obviously when you work in those districts, you have to find out how is the law applied here. And that's what we do. I appreciate you joining me tonight. I appreciate your time and your attention. As always, thanks for choosing the Mels program at Gardner Webb. We love having you. If you got questions, I'll entertain those. If not,
Dr. Lamb, I did have one question. Do we meet with Dr. Ho?
mm-mm,
Oh, we don't. Okay.
it will be me.
Oh, all you. Okay,
It's
got you.
it's gonna be all me,
Okay.
all the time.
Okay, got you. Got you. Yes,
Gonna
sir.
be all me all the time. No,
Okay.
I do my own coaching. I'm gonna have to recommend you for a job. I need to know you. I want to spend some time with you. I hate we don't get to get together face to face anymore. I want to know who you are. This is more for me than hopefully I won't harm you too bad for having been around me too much. But I want to know who you are. I want us to have conversations. I want to see your work. I read every work that you write. I read it all. I want to know. We produce enough average administrators. I want great ones. I want y'all to be great. And I'm selfish. I want to, in the summer, we don't have time for all of that going back and forth in the summertime. We're cutting out the middleman. I'm going to spend 2 hours with you every week. We're going to have a good time. We're going to learn something. I'll learn more than y'all will. I'm quite sure. I don't know much. Well, I do know I've got most of it, but I'm depending on y'all to remind me of what really goes on out in the real world now. All right. Y'all have a good night. Thank you. I'll see you
Thank you, Dr.
next.
Lamb. Okay.
I'll see you next Tuesday.
Dr. Lamb, I have a question that's probably
Yes.
probably just specific to me. One thing that I'm having an issue with is the principal that I chose